Good to be back with you for another day of Bible study. My name is Kevin Young. I have the privilege of serving at Christ Table as lead clergy. If you'd like to know more about Christ Table, you can visit the URL that is right up there, www.christstable.today. Would encourage you whenever you get there, sign up for the email list so that you will know everything that's going on around Christ Table. If you'd like to know more about this study in particular, though, brought to you by Christ Table, you can visit the URL that is right there in front of me, go.christstable.today/fearnot. There are a couple of PDFs that you can download. One which gives the schedule for the entire study along with the passages that are tied to each and every day. And then there's also a larger PDF there that is a study guide that includes questions and conversations and devotionals for each day of the study. That's absolutely free. Now, if you'd like to have a printed copy of that, then you can get a printed copy of that there, but also the PDF is freely available for you to download. Now, today, as we continue through this Fear Not series, we're going to tackle one verse in particular, John chapter 10, verse 10. Now, whenever we come to John, Jesus is right in the middle of his ministry, and there are a lot of people who are afraid. One of the things that we've talked about over the last few days in this study is that whenever God seems to interact with human beings, especially whenever angels come and interact with human beings on behalf of God, there seems to be fear. In fact, one of the first words or lines that oftentimes is said almost every single time in an interaction between a human and an angel or a representative of God or God himself is, fear not. Don't be afraid. So this week we've been kind of talking a little bit more deeply about fear and this idea of good news and bad news. And bad news, right, seems to instill fear in us. But sometimes, as we've said, good news can instill fear in us as well, because it may not initially seem like good news. So John chapter 10, verse 10, there is this classic line that Jesus makes. The thief's purpose is to steal, my accent, steal, kill, and destroy. My purpose, Jesus says, though, is to give them rich and satisfying life, to give abundant life is the idea here. And abundant means not just enough, but overflowing, more than enough. And so rich and satisfying, that's kind of the picture that's being given here, is that Jesus says that my purpose is to give them, whoever they are, a rich and satisfying life, an abundant life that is overflowing. So a lot of times over the years, this idea of thief is a concept that has been attached to Satan, to the devil, to the evil one. And so whenever oftentimes we read the word thief or hear it, if you've been in church for any length of time, we kind of translate that to being this individual, this thing, this fallen angel that's stealing and killing and destroying. But that's really not what's in view here. Jesus seems to have a much broader definition or concept of the word thief here, in that individuals can be stealing and killing and destroying his purpose, abundant life, a rich and satisfying life. So this idea of good news is kind of wrapped up here in this idea in John chapter 10, verse 10, in that it should be good news that Jesus' purpose is to bring a rich and satisfying life. And we've talked yesterday specifically about how the gospel, if you've ever heard that word, is really just a biblical word that means good news. And so Jesus is intent on bringing the gospel, or is intent on bringing good news to individuals. And now if you've ever heard bring the gospel to people, you might think that that is intended to be salvation, or to be a fire escape from hell, or that the gospel is Jesus dying on the cross and the death and the burial and the resurrection. And perhaps all of those things can and are good news. But I think at its most basic foundational level, the good news is that Jesus has said, I'm coming to bring you life rather than death. I'm coming to bring you a life that is worth living, a life that is rich and that is satisfying. And so a life that perhaps wipes away fear because it's rich and satisfying. Now, this line from Jesus, though, is a line that comes in the middle of this long story. And the story essentially is a blind man that Jesus heals, and then in order to have his healing essentially accepted and validated, he has to go before the priest, but it's not acceptable to say that Jesus is the one who did the healing, because if they say that, then they have to say that they believed or confessed that Jesus is the Messiah, and that was not acceptable. So he could get thrown out of the temple and the synagogue. His parents could get thrown out of the temple or the synagogue. So it creates this big kerfuffle where the religious establishment, the leaders, are trying to pinpoint exactly how this person was healed, not even actually believing that he was healed. And then when it comes out that it's Jesus, it's a big deal. And Jesus, whenever he finds this out, kind of goes through the roof, and he makes this broad statement. And this is one of the statements that he makes just before our verse for today. In the context, he said, I entered this world to render judgment. And you may have heard that God's going to judge you, that God came in this world to judge you, that Revelation, God's going to judge the world and all of the wrong and all the things that are in the world. And you may hear that judgment and you may think of hell or fire or brimstone or God smoting people. But Jesus, whenever he says, I entered this world to render judgment, and here is the judgment that I entered the world in order to render, it's going to shock you. It's going to blow your mind. To give sight to the blind, and to show those who think they see that they're actually the ones who are blind. This is the judgment. Jesus says, I entered this world to render judgment. And I can, in this moment, feel so many fundamentalists from my past, like sitting on the edge of their seat. They're waiting for it. And I can hear so many people in Jesus' audience, just the breathing, pausing for that moment, just waiting for it. Here it is. Here it is. We've been shouting, repent. Jesus has been shouting, repent. We know that Jesus, on behalf of God, is here to take butt and kick names. And we're just, here it is. Here it is. Here is the judgment. Wait, what? What did he say? This is giving sight to the blind. Jesus isn't judgment. I need you to go back and read the Bible that isn't going to exist for another 300 years and get this right. Okay. This isn't judgment. Enigmatoia. That word does not mean what you think it means. To give sight to the blind, that's not judgment. To help those who think they see to realize that they're blind, that's not judgment. And Jesus is like, it's judgment. I came to give life, not to abuse life. I came to give you life that is abundant and overflowing, that is rich, that is satisfying. You hear judgment and you think fear. And God keeps telling you over and over and over again, fear not. Every time an angel shows up, God keeps telling you over and over and over again, fear not. And yet you keep trying to make people fear this judgment of giving sight to the blind and helping the blind who think they see realize that they're actually blind. So Jesus talks about what he has come to do and how it's different than other people who have come before him. And you recognize those same people exist today. People who are giving you a message from God, but it doesn't seem to resonate with this message from Jesus. Ignore Jesus. Pay no attention to these messages. Just look at the word repent that he used. Just look at the word judgment that he used, but don't read around it, because you might start getting ideas. You might start thinking that judgment doesn't exist. So the text says kind of at the end of the story that whenever Jesus had finished saying these things, the people were again divided in their opinions about him. They're like, even Jesus, they're visibly, audibly saying it. People didn't believe it. Just like people still today, when they read the Bible, just don't believe it. When they hear these things about Jesus and about judgment. Some said, he is demon possessed and he is out of his mind. Why listen to a man like that? And others said, this man doesn't sound like a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? People are going to continue to get Jesus wrong. Even people who are religious, even people who are pastors, even people who claim to have followed him, maybe have followed Jesus for most or all of their life, are going to get Jesus wrong, are going to side on the side of fear. And yet Jesus and God continue to show up and say, fear not, I am here. I'm here to give you life, not give you death. Thieves steal and kill and destroy. And if there are things that are being stolen from you, things that are being killed around you, things that are being destroyed in your midst, it's probably not God. I came to help you see. If you can't see, I came to help you see. And if you think you see, but you're blind, I still came to help you see as well. That's judgment. That doesn't sound like a man possessed by a demon. It doesn't sound like a crazy man. Can a demon open eyes of the blind? And people are still, even today, wrestling with who Jesus is and what Jesus does and how Jesus acts. But at the end of the day, fear not. It should be good news, right? So I want to pose this question. Is good news the antidote to fear? So in your thinking today and your study and your comments even online, feel free to let me know. Whenever you think of good news, is good news an antidote to fear, or is good news something else? Because Jesus came announcing good news, the kingdom, encouraging people to change their minds, repent, bringing judgment to help people see. Good news. But is that good news? Is good news an antidote to fear, or is it something else? Well, it's been good to be with you today. I look forward to being with you tomorrow as we continue our Fear Not Bible study. But until that time,